Welcome back to another episode of the Engineering Our Future podcast. I'm your host, Luis Duque, and this week I'm bringing you a conversation with Sophie Lipomanis. She's a ASCE National Student Ambassador and a overall amazing ambassador for civil engineering and just engineering in general. She has a really interesting view in her career, and I was happy to get to know her a little bit, talk to her and just connect and share her experience and her story. She's a student that has a really big passion for volunteering and serving others. And we'll get a little bit more on her conversation, but she has a really interesting want for her career path. And I think it's a career path that not a lot of engineers realize it exists. So I think it was of great value and of great interest that she shared that amazing story and that amazing want of becoming a civil engineer for this specific career. She also shares some really great advice for students about networking, just staying involved in the profession and in civil engineering as we all kind of are staying home and it's increasingly difficult to network in person. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode with Sophie. She's an amazing civil engineer that I came across on social media, and I just wanted to bring her to the podcast and kind of share her story and share all the great things that she's doing in her career. As always, remember to subscribe to the podcast, rate and review the show. It really helps get the word out there, and it helps the show grow and get in front of a lot more people. So thank you so much for listening. And let's get into the conversation for this week. So before we start today's episode, let me tell you about PPI. If you're a student or even a young engineer that is currently studying for the FE or PE or even the SE exam, PPI is one of the best resources on the internet to get practice exams, practice problems, materials, all the things you need to succeed in your exam. They are kind enough to have provided a 15% coupon for all the listeners of this show to get access to those materials at a discounted price. So if you go to ppi2pass/Duque, you will be able to take advantage of this 15% code. And I know I'm going to be using PPI for my PE exam in the near future. I'm actually getting ready to prepare for the PE to be taken next cycle, I think in April. So they have an amazing platform with a lot of great resources. So again, go to ppi2pass/Duque to get 15% discount on your purchase. Without further ado, let's just get into the conversation for today. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Engineering of Future podcast. Today, I have Sophie with me. She's a student and ASCE National Ambassador and is doing some great things in the profession. So I wanted to have a conversation with her. I'll let her introduce herself briefly.
Hi, my name is Sophie Lipomanis. I am a junior civil and environmental engineering student at the University of Louisville in Kentucky. Right now, I'll say stationed out in New Jersey just because of virtual learning, and I'm working on an internship remotely. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the questions I have for you, I know you've been really involved with ASCE and other kind of organizations, is as a student, what value do you see like volunteering with ASCE and how do you find sometimes the time to volunteer with those organizations when you're, again, a full-time student and balancing like all these leadership positions?
That's a great question because I think student involvement hold really near and dear to my heart, mostly because people don't understand a lot of the times when you're entering the scary realm of higher education that everyone's in your shoes and no one really knows what they're doing. So getting involved and taking that first step, leaving your comfort zone, is only going to develop you better as a professional in whatever kind of department you're in. And that's why I always encourage people to get as involved as possible, whether that be ASCE, Engineers Without Borders, any of your professional societies. But it's just going to offer enrichment. You're going to get to meet amazing people. I've met my best friends from all across the country, and in every state, I know someone that can put a smile on your face. And it's all because I wasn't afraid and I left my comfort zone to meet these people. So,
yeah, that's great. And I noticed you recently, or not super recently, but you switched majors from, I think it was biomedical engineering to civil engineering. How was that transition, and why did you decide to change majors that drastically, I guess?
That's a funny story because I got all the way up until my senior year in biomedical engineering. And what ended up happening is when you start thinking of the next stage after college. You can either go into higher education, graduate school, maybe get your PhD, but you're no longer in any framework of what you want to do. And when I reached that point in biomedical engineering, I realized I didn't want to pursue it in a career. And then I was always really fascinated with the idea of service and being involved in school. That's kind of when I stumbled upon the U.S. Navy Civil Engineering Corps Officer like scholarship program. But you needed to be a civil engineer for this to be something you consider. So I took a little time off, and when I went back to college, I dove into civil engineering, and I love it so much. Not just for the puns, though, that really helped bridge the gap, but I also just really love the major and the idea of how much more. I almost want to say the doors that civil engineering opens are very different, especially when you want to help your community. It's all about building communities. To me, that really appealed. Biomedical, you kind of just, it's just very different, but you're still helping in a very different way.
Yeah, definitely. Have you mentioned you volunteer with the EWB a little bit. How was that experience? And tell us a little bit more about kind of what draw you to like volunteering with EWB as well as kind of all the things you're doing right now. I know you kind of mentioned offline you wanted to pursue a service career, kind of what you mentioned right now with the C Corp and like after graduation. So I'm sure like all of these things tie because EWB has programs with C Corp kind of nationally, and seems like you are very involved with or were very involved with EWB, now with ASCE, and now kind of continuing to that path of service with like C Corp.
Yeah, it's ever since I was a kid, my favorite thing to ask is just how can I help? And so that's why I've always, I think, done very well with different student groups, just because I like helping out. And with Engineers Without Borders, one of the cool things that gives you the opportunity is realize how kind of lucky you are. And it gives you that first stepping stone, especially as a college student when you're now kind of an independent entity that you never really had before. There's no curfew, there's nothing, where you get to work with a community that really needs help, whether that be a bridge or a drainage system. And the one I worked at with Rutgers was our team was Guatemala team, and we were working on just providing clean water for a very small kind of area. We got to do the funding, planning. We got to work with a professional engineer, and just learn about the process. And it makes you appreciate what you have, and it also makes you really, really kind of feel good giving back. Because especially as an engineer, one of the most important things you can give is your time, because once you get to this level of technical expertise, I know with your structural, being able to donate that just to help improve the quality of life so much more than the quality that they have now. It just, that feeling just makes me feel all warm. So
Yeah, that's definitely great, and I've definitely volunteered quite a bit with EWB, so I know kind of that feeling of just seeing those projects come through to help these small communities and everything. Do you want to expand a little bit on what you want to do after graduation? Because I think that's a very interesting career path for civil engineers that we don't usually think about. I mean, we think about structural, transportation, all these really common fields of civil engineering. But I think what you are planning to do and want to do is kind of very interesting, and just want to hear a little bit more about that.
It's crazy because I didn't even know this was a career path. Again, I found out about this when I was in biomedical engineering. But if you pursue, again, I always have loved the idea of helping people, and it's not really about, getting anything for it. It's just helping. And so I discovered the U.S. Naval Officer Program. They have this whole group, which is a combatant type, which is called the CBs. And from what I've learned about them is they go in natural disasters, like any kind of hurricane, a third world country doesn't have the necessary, ports or the structures to help get boats and rescue vehicles out there. So a lot of humanitarian relief and natural disaster mitigation efforts. So anyway, that's kind of like my dream job, just getting to go out there and donate as much time to help places as I can, and serve where you can. And then when you get out, bring that knowledge back to your community. And maybe after that, just work more with ASCE. That's kind of like a secondary dream job post Navy. And if they're listening to this, sorry, just kidding. But yeah, so that was my game plan when I graduated, to enter the Navy that way.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, all the things you're doing right now really shows that you're really invested in just serving others and helping out. And I think one of the things that I found you through was being a National ASCE Ambassador, which I think is a fairly new program. I think it was last year was the first kind of class of ambassadors. Do you want to expand a little bit on what that entails and how you are sharing the good things ASC is doing at the national level for students?
Sure. So what we've noticed in ASC, once you kind of get into the higher levels of the community, is that there's a little bit of a gap between the way some student chapters are able to work with the national branches, where a lot of the time students treat it almost like kind of a high school group, and they forget that there are so many opportunities that are provided to them and resources from ASC, kind of as our mother club almost. So the National Ambassador Program was inaugurally done last year, and I was lucky enough to be selected to be one of the inaugural, ambassadors. And we just talked and promoted ASC. We tried to help bridge this gap. And the cool thing is we actually got to be speakers at the workshop for student chapter leaders. So as I've mentioned kind of a little bit, I'm really excited about the idea of improving transition and retention. I think involvement is so healthy, and I think it's also just helping your civil engineering community. And I think students, especially, that they don't realize the ASC is so much more than just a high school club, because it's not. It's a professional organization, and just really excited to try to share how much more they can provide students. And so that's what ASC ambassadors do. And then this year we've grown from 18 to 27 members across the country, and I'm so excited to work with them all. And we're just going to be doing the same thing and promoting ASC and trying to get the word out there and bridge that kind of communication and do what we can. So
Yeah, I think that's super important because not all the, at least personally, when I was in school and in university, I did not volunteer with ASC a lot, and I think that's one of my biggest regrets, because once I graduated and realized ASC has all these things to offer and all these opportunities with the different institutes and just the friendships you develop with ASC, it's something very valuable that I kind of missed during my college career. How has been your experience with ASC, like at your university right now, or I guess in the past couple of years when it was somewhat normal, but right now, especially with COVID and just
yeah.
everyone staying home, how has that changed from what you used to do before in terms of the local chapter?
Kind of crazy because my first year with ASC at my college, it wasn't a very active club. I think it had like maybe 5 members that did anything. And we actually received an award for being now a top 5 percentage in the entire country for ASC student chapters. So what we were seeing is we were seeing a huge increase of just, membership involvement. And we were seeing a huge increase in just us being involved as a student group. And then COVID comes and strikes, and no one really knows what to do. But here's the cool thing is everyone's experiencing the same thing across the board. So what we've been doing is really working with students to try to not overwhelm them with more virtual things that they could do. So that's the first kind of, if anyone is trying to take some advice on what to do with your student chapter, try to work with your department and try to consolidate, only do maybe 1 weekly email, put as much info as you can on there, have an executive summary of a couple points. But there's an issue nowadays with students being overwhelmed with virtual information. And that's something that we want to make sure people aren't overly saturated with, too many emails. So we've noticed that, but we've had a great turnout. We've still had speakers come and talk virtually, which has opened so many doors. We've had a speaker that's stationed, Stacy and Wetbeck, out in Seattle, that was able to talk to our Louisville ASC chapter. And I don't want to say that nothing positive has ever come from COVID, but I do want to say that it has definitely improved our ability to communicate and close that gap from across the country and made us a lot more efficient at doing so.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's definitely really interesting that you've been able to kind of take what seems like it's a downside with all the pandemic and everything and make it into a positive by bringing, speakers from all across the country, sounds like. What are some of the other activities you guys are doing right now, rather than just having speakers? Are you guys looking to like activities online where other members can be more involved, or how are you balancing that? Having speakers obviously is really good, but you want to have involved and more active members in your chapter.
Well, our officers are amazing, so we have some really great ideas. We're having an internship photo contest right now. So we're having everyone submit any pictures that they've had of themselves doing crazy civil engineering stuff. And then I have random ASC merch that I'm going to be giving them in the mail. So we're going to pick the top couple pictures. But the other thing we're doing is, and I'm encouraging all student chapter groups to do this, is communities are hurting really bad with COVID, and especially in lower income areas. So U of L, we're doing Feed the West campaign. So we're trying to raise like as much money as we can, and it goes straight to help providing food for families that have been really negatively impacted by, COVID and the implications there. So highly encourage anyone to start something like that. I mean, you don't have to listen hard to hear where your community is hurting, and it's not very hard to start helping them. So
Yeah, definitely good things come out of bad things, I guess. Especially now with so many people hurting, and honestly, a lot of people are still doing great. I
yeah,
think so. There's a great opportunity for them to step up and share a little bit of the good luck they've had during COVID, and just share a little bit to these communities.
it's like a ball, like it's either a hit or a miss, really.
Yeah, honestly. So I'm wondering. So the other question I had is, did you had any experience with internships this past summer, or are you having one next summer? How's that looking right now, working remotely and working kind of, I don't know if it was your first internship with them, or if it was the kind of repeat internship, but just kind of walk us through kind of that experience of having an internship when everyone or most of us are working from home.
So what my school actually does is we have a 3 co-op requirement, which means we have to complete 3 internships that are a full semester in length. So I finished my first co-op out in Seattle, Washington, right when COVID hit, which was kind of terrifying. And it was funny. I actually did a podcast with ASCE talking about my experience going through that. So anyway, they obviously moved to a virtual kind of experience for me, and I finished out that way. But then the next step was I had to take summer classes with my school. That's what every student did in my year. But here was the question: what do you do next? How do you find your next co-op rotation? Who's hiring? So it's kind of a great question because a lot of people don't realize, but we're essential workers, most of the construction employees. So they haven't really had as many hiring freezes that you would see in other engineering disciplines. So if you're especially going for like a construction related co-op field, I highly recommend it. And also I highly recommend reaching out to anyone in ASCE. They're going to really be able to put you in the right door and introduce you to the right people. And what I'm doing now, everyone will say this if they're, I'm sure you experience this too, but I kind of miss the office setting, but I am virtual. So you can't really walk across, the hall and knock on someone's door and ask them how to do something. But what it does make you do is it makes you very adept at being able to ask different people at different times. And so now I'm working with a company called CPMI, which is Capital Project Management Incorporated, and they are expert civil engineers that go over schedule delay analyses and just kind of try to find out if there's a delay, whose fault it is, and whatnot. And I'm learning so much because that's another way that civil engineering is kind of a different professional route that you can go through. You're not per se in design, but you're looking at ways legally it could affect, a construction process, which I could talk about it for a while, but it's very interesting. It's very interesting. But yeah, so I highly encourage everyone to just keep fostering those relationships you've made in school and reaching out to contacts, any business cards you've had. But that was my experience.
Yeah, and I think something you mentioned was really interesting. Just having a network, either
Mhm.
with ASCE or, I mean, even within the university is really important. Um, how has that changed for you during this time, and what kind of tips or advice do you have for other students kind of looking for internships right now and are looking to expand their network and find kind of new opportunities through networking?
Well, with that, it's almost hard because most of the comments I've received from fellow students is it's hard to genuinely connect in this virtual format. And one of the things that people always tell you is at a conference, you can tell a lot about a student or by someone you want to work for by their handshake or just, by meeting them in a first impression like that. And you don't have that opportunity here because everything is being done virtually to help, reduce the risks of COVID spreading. So what I would say is if you don't have a LinkedIn, first and foremost, make sure you have a LinkedIn, stay active there. But also look at those online webinars. They have so many free, informative, I think they have PDHs that are free that you can go through with ASCE and other organizations. I think the Professional Engineering Society too, they've been giving a lot of free lectures that you could take. And it's a really good time to just keep boosting your credentials. And you will eventually be able to build up a network or just talk to one of the panelists on a webinar and just send them an email saying thank you. And just always be that person that goes an extra mile, because that's going to be what sets you apart from the people that were just in the lobby. Maybe they paid attention. Maybe they were on Netflix. Who knows what they were doing? But just go that extra mile. And a little kind of bit of advice that I always do, and it is my secret weapon. But when I was at a conference, on the back of business cards, I always wrote my favorite thing about the conversation I had with that person and a characteristic, something to distinguish them from this other stack of cards I had. And then I would send them a thank you email. So the same thing you could do with a virtual kind of setting. Just write something down about the speaker that you really enjoyed, some talking points, and then make sure you reach out to them, because it's going to make them smile, it's going to make you smile, and it's going to pay off like in the long run.
Yeah, that's definitely great advice. And I think it's even more important right now that everyone is staying home, and the
Yeah.
ways to connect with each other is, we have the technology available, but it's harder to like replicate that in-person connection, and yeah, it's harder to connect with everyone. So I think that's some great advice. Get a LinkedIn page for sure. I think that's how I found you in the first place, and I've been able to connect with a lot of people on LinkedIn, and has helped me find new guys for the podcast that are doing, again, great things on the society and in their careers also. So one of the last questions I have for you is, what advice will you give a new freshman that is kind of entering an engineer career? It doesn't necessarily need to be civil engineering, but an engineer student kind of starting as a freshman?
Well, as I can clearly be a very clear example of, it's okay to change your mind. If you're in engineering and if you're down the path where you're a senior now and you still don't really feel like you've committed or connected to your degree path, it's the best time to make those hiccups is now, because you can go back a lot easier than, let's say, if you sat on that decision, then worked for a company you didn't really love for like 30 years. That's not what you want to do. What you want to do is make sure you try as many different things as possible. If you're pursuing mechanical engineering and want to be a part of your rocketry club, I say do it. Even if you want to be a part of the Biomedical Engineering Society and you're not a biomedical engineer, I say do it. Just make sure you leave your comfort zone. Do something that puts you in a situation that you wouldn't be in before, because it's only going to help you grow and it's going to open your mind up to a different perspective. And engineering is the coolest major that there is. I'm a super dork, but the amount of ways that an engineer is involved in the community and in almost everything. Yeah, actually, I'm going to say in everything. It's just the coolest thing to be a part of. So don't limit your scope. Learn all about it.
Yeah, definitely great advice. And I mean, as a fellow engineer, I love engineering, and I always wanted to be an engineer since I was little. So that's great advice. Kind of following up on that, one of the things I'm trying to do with this podcast and social media and everything is help everyone understand and realize that minorities. I'm a Latino, so as a working engineer kind of in the US, I'm definitely a minority. Women engineers have struggled for years and centuries to be recognized as they should be recognized. What is your advice for other younger women engineering, or even high school students that want to become an engineer, from your experience, and how they can be more successful in their careers?
That's an amazing question, especially in today's climate. There's a lot of really powerful movements going on right now that are getting some great momentum. I guess the young ladies out there that are going through the path of the civil or any kind of engineering or STEM field. In biomedical, I think the statistic is about 54% are women in biomedical. But then when you move to civil, I think the statistic drops down to like 10%. And it's funny because when I had first gone to college, my first time, I would look around and I would see, there wasn't too much of a difference between the many of guys, around me versus female. And then when I got to civil engineering, that's kind of when I started noticing it. And it was, I'd say the bit of advice I could offer women going through that is, don't let that discourage you, and don't let that present itself like a challenge to you. The only thing that's going to do is make yourself feel defeated before you've even gotten up to start the battle. And just, I mean, the world is changing and we're in the coolest major because civils are the best. And, you know, it's just like building a bridge or building a structure, building society. It's one brick at a time. And sometimes there's faulty material up there that we have to tear down. And it's just important to stay involved with your community and back the right organizations that are doing the right things, being good people, and just don't let it beat you before you have a chance to stand up on it.
Yeah, that's great. Um, yeah, it's tough. I've talked to a lot of women and other even Latinos that have really struggled to advance in their careers
Yeah.
because they're being stereotyped or whatever situation it's going on. So I just wanna say thank you for that advice, and we need to keep encouraging more little girls, more younger women in engineering to really pursue the career that they want to choose. It's not like a self-imposed thing that we need to impose on them, but it just show them that a civil engineer can be a woman, can be a man, can be a Latino, can be whoever we want it to be, and being a woman doesn't really take away from that, and we need to encourage these young engineers. So thank you so much for all you're doing, and I'm very happy that I connected with you. So the last question I have for you is, how can we continue engineering our future?
Hmm. Well, every day there's a little bit of engineering that you can do, whether it's just picking up trash. And I know that sounds silly, but that's related to engineering by cleaning the environment, promoting sustainability initiatives, maybe getting involved with any organization or society, volunteering. Maybe I'm actually reaching out to a middle school, township school sending district right now just to see if I can host a virtual talk with them, try to do something to help teach kids and get them excited about STEM. Amidst this really unorthodox type of schooling that they're about to go through. So, I mean, the next steps for engineering is it changes every day. The standards change every day. But it's just stay curious and keep trying to push those limits and build a taller building and make a longer bridge and make it cleaner and safer than it was before. And just keep looking for ways to build a better place, you know? And that's all we can do.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean, the work we do as engineers is really important, and the
Mm-hmm.
more we kind of lean on each other and help each other, it's gonna be the best for our profession. Civil engineering is a very experimental profession that kind of builds into the past, and I think the more we can collaborate between each other is it's gonna be very valuable. So I think that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast. Thank you so much for all the things you're doing as an ASCE Student Ambassador and all the things kind of going on around your career as a student and all the things that you have planned for the future. For those of the listeners that want to reach out to you, where can they find you and reach out to you?
Well, they're welcome to find me on Instagram. I have Sophie underscore the underscore civil underscore engineer. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Else, you're also welcome to look me up on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, I am pretty prompt with responses about that. And yeah, just thank you so much for having me. I think the podcast is great. I'm so excited to see all the other speakers that you're going to have. And thank you too. This is one of the best things engineers can do. You're connecting everyone. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being on the podcast. So there you have it. That's the conversation for today. Sophie is an amazing engineer, as I said. I think she's gonna have an amazing career, and she's doing amazing things with her volunteering and overall her passion for helping others, helping other students, and just helping the society in general. I think is really powerful to hear that she has this huge plan to advance in her career and just continue to serve other people, because that's what civil engineers are for. We serve other people and we help everyone kind of along the path. So I was very happy to connect with her, get to know her, and just kind of share this conversation with all of you. So I really hope you enjoyed the conversation with Sophie, and give her a shout on social media, and yeah, just follow all the great things that she's doing in her career. Really hope you enjoyed the episode. So as always, thank you, Jack, for the music. He's actually dropping his new album tomorrow, so make sure you check it out and give it a shout for all the great music that he's composing, and for letting me use the music here in the show. Again, thank you so much for listening. Rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, it really helps. And yeah, thanks for listening week after week. The show, it's continued to grow, continue to improve in all the things that I'm doing, and I'm very happy where this is heading, bringing amazing conversation with incredible engineers, and overall I'm very happy with the talks that I've been having with other people, and just learning more from them and learning more insight to what they're doing and what they have to share with all of you. As always, I'll see you on the next one, but for now, let's continue engineering our future.